All right. I will call our workshop to order on the Arena Refrigerant Replacement and Energy Savings Program to order. Let's first start off with quick introductions in the room here. So I will start first. I am Commissioner Mai-Chan Zhang. I represent District.
Victoria Reinhardt, Commissioner, District 7.
Nicole Fredham, Commissioner, District 1.
Mary Jo McGuire, Commissioner, District 2.
Rena Moran, Commissioner, District 4.
Ryan O'Connor, County Manager.
Joanna Berg, also County Manager.
There you go.
Oh, wow. Ditto, yeah.
Mark McDade, Parks and Recreation Director.
That was good.
John Council on the Central and West Beach.
All the county executive.
Right over there.
I'm sorry. Alex, Liz Flynn, Director of Operations for Ice Arena.
Recreation Parks Director, Facility. Aaron Vogel with Commissioner Ryan.
Jerry Collins, also county. I'm serving as deputy county.
Wonderful. Thank you all for being here today. So for this workshop, we are here for Parks and Rec to present on the Arena Refrigerant Replacement and Energy Savings Program. As the majority of us know about our ice arenas is that they utilize the refrigerant R22 that is no longer being manufactured. So a replacement refrigerant is needed. And arenas are also a major consumer of our energy. So if you are online, you'll see that they consume the bulk of the energy in our Parks Department. And so park staff have been working on creative solutions to find a way to fund the replacement refrigeration systems and also to reduce our energy consumption. So with that, I'll pass it off to our County Manager, Johanna Berg, who will provide some further background for this workshop. But before I do, I see Commissioner Reinhardt here.
I just, as we were gathering in here, I was telling the folks back there that before becoming a county commissioner, I was on the Capital Improvements Board. And so that is 30 years ago. And at that point, they were saying, we can no longer use R22. And we've got to come up with some options. And so this has been something that's ongoing for 30 years or more. But I do remember the staff saying also, but don't worry, we have lots of stockpile. I was like, okay, I get that, but there's a reason that it's not going to be used anymore. So I'm really glad to be here today to hear about what we are going to be doing, because the reason it was taken off and you're not supposed to use it is because of the environmental hazards with it. So, as I said upstairs, it's going to be exciting, and I truly believe it will.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to provide a little broad context here. Parks and Rec staff will be coming back later this year to talk about the overall arena portfolio across the system. We want to do that update after legislative session. Our request there. This briefing this morning is focused on challenges in arenas due to the utilization. The Parks team is doing great work to seek funding opportunities, including refrigeration replacements through the Energy Savings Program that is being discussed here. So with that, I will turn it over to Mark. Also, we'll mention that this is responsive to some of the questions that came up in EGCI's budget hearing around our looking at other sources of funding. I'll turn it over to Mark. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. It was a very powerful presentation this morning at the board meeting, and so I'll try my best here. You're not going to get as beautiful of a song. Thank God, Mark. That was a tough act to follow, but we'll do our best here. Before we get going, I do want to, thank commissioners for their time today. I want to thank Ryan Reese from the Parks and Recreation staff. He's really been tireless advocate for this energy conservation work and looking into the operations as well. How can we continue to operate these facilities and address this refrigerant issue? He's the one that's really led seeking out these energy programs and done a lot of work to get us to this point. So I just want to recognize that and thank Ryan for his work. Also, just want to thank our partners at Honeywell who came today, Josh and Cindy, who, we've just been kicking off this work and looking into things, but they've been really great to work with, and we're looking forward to working with them throughout the phase of the project. So, and yeah, as you know, it's as the commissioner said, Commissioner Reinhardt, it's been a issue for a long time coming. So we're really excited to be talking about a way to at least, creatively problem solve for a good chunk of the system. So with that, we'll get into there we go. So, I covered that. As far as the overall arena system, just real briefly, and tough to see on the map, but we try to star the locations of the arenas. So we operate 11 overall facilities, 13 sheets of ice, so 7 arenas in the city of St. Paul and 4 in the suburban areas throughout the county. As far as the kind of issues surrounding R22, as was mentioned, so all of our facilities, by the way, except the TCO Sports Garden, utilize R22. So that system does not use R22. So 10%. As of 2020, the federal government no longer allows the production of R22. It's legal to continue to utilize it, but those stockpiles of supplies are shrinking, so there's not as much available. And just through, like, our maintenance staff, I think, does do a great job of maintaining these facilities, and so they try to prevent any and do preventative maintenance from any like major leaks occurring. But that is sort of the nature of working in refrigeration, as that does happen. And so, if that weren't to happen, we wouldn't be consuming product, but it does. So you do use like pounds of refrigerant every year, and having that stockpile is becoming less since it's not manufactured anymore. And so the big risk is if we had a major leak or are no longer able to procure inventory, then we'd have to stop operating. So it is an issue with continuity of operations.
Director McCabe, are there environmental impacts directly or potentially affecting residents caused by the use of the refrigerant? And then also, when there are leaks, are there like reporting measures that we have to take?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, as far as when the leaks or as leaks occur, our staff is trained in the utilization and protective measures that go into handling of refrigerant because they do have some inherent risks with them. I would say in terms of the leaks that we're talking about, it's atmospheric and it really is very minuscule amounts, and so it's not as if when that happens that there's a threat to people's health and safety in that moment. I mean, it's something that if we had significant issues, we would absolutely evacuate. We've got plans to not have people in the building and all those sort of precautions, but there isn't there hasn't been an identified health and safety risk. And the systems, they're designed to be closed systems in terms of it's looping in a system. And so much like your home AC or something like that, it's, contained in your mechanical system. It's just when, wear and tear takes place that there can be leaks, and they're addressed on a pretty frequent basis. If I go back to Ryan, I don't know if there's anything else to add to that. As he's overseeing the maintenance staff.
Thank you.
Yep. As far as energy use challenges, as we mentioned, so we work with property management, as you know, on doing combined reporting for all energy consumed in buildings, and utilize that as one of our performance measures and overall metrics that we're working toward reducing energy consumption as a whole county portfolio. So all that is tracked into that Energy Saver program that property management manages. So as we take a look at that data, just this past year, 87% of all energy consumed in park and recreation facilities, so that includes golf course buildings, park shelters, arenas, all that stuff, all those buildings, 87% of that energy was consumed in ice arenas. So obviously, huge, energy users, as you would expect. The facilities that we have, are largely built in the 1970s before modern energy conservation practices were in place. The buildings don't have, with the exception of TCO Sports Garden, don't have modern building automation technology in them where you can, smartly control the temperature. People are not in there, you could cool the building down or warm the building up a little bit at night, whatever, modify that. They're not equipped with that. And warmer temperatures right now, as we're all experiencing, like this winter, are putting additional stress on systems. So as we experience warmer temperatures, the systems have to work harder to maintain the.
Commissioner McGuire.
Quickly, thank you, Madam Chair, just because I want to make sure I heard, did you say except for TCO Sports Garden or in addition to TCO? They have smart, right? Because they're newer,
The
right?
TCO Sports Garden does have
Does have
a
it,
building
yeah,
automation
okay.
system.
I thought I misheard that, yeah,
No.
great, thanks.
And just to follow up quickly, what does TCO
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
use for the?
It's another R refrigerant. I had that, I don't know. 507, okay. There we go.
All right, there we go.
Yeah, so yeah, there are a number of different refrigerants, but
Okay,
that is
great.
the one that they use.
Commissioner Moran.
A little bit more basic, what is TCO?
Sorry, Commissioner Moran, TCO is Twin Cities Orthopedics, and it was formerly the Vadnais Sports Center. So it's an ice arena located in Vadnais, city of Vadnais Heights, that we own and operate. It's got 2 sheets of ice, and then there's also a indoor turf facility on the site.
And just because it's helpful for background, because some of us were here when this happened, it was a amazing deal. I mean, it was a sports arena that unfortunately Vadnais Heights couldn't afford anymore, and we got it at a fire sale, is how I think about it. I mean, we got it for a really good deal to add one more ice arena to our group. I mean, only because it was such a good deal is how I think about it, and because was gonna need less upkeep than the rest of them, which we knew were coming to this point of needing to be renovated. Have I said that in as plain a language as I can?
And I'll add, I mean, you
Yeah.
can see there's not as many suburban arenas, and it's actually, a lot of people would actually like another idea for their district. So, and then the TCO part is, we have a name. So Twin Cities Orthopedics, gave us money for naming rights, which also helped us make some improvements. There was the turf facility was domed, which collapsed.
Doomed.
Yeah,
Doomed.
and had to
Doomed.
be
Yeah.
redesigned, so that helped us funding.
Thank you for that, educational moment, Twin City Orthopedics. I was like, Twin City Orthopedics?
Yeah,
Right.
Right.
Yeah, Madam
why
Chair,
not?
Commissioners, like Commissioner President was mentioning, yeah, we did a naming rights agreement, in 2020, and that yielded $1.8 million over a course of like 15 years. But they have a facility on that campus, and so they're able to name that, and we utilize those funds to rebuild that facility.
There's a secondary name on one of the ice sheets, right?
Yep, Madam Chair, Commissioner Fretham, on the, there's secondary names, there's a brand within, Twin Cities Orthopedics called Training House, and they purchased that, and we actually just sold naming rights for the indoor space for the turf facility to City and County Credit Union.
Oh,
Last week
wow.
as well. So we're dabbling in this, space of sponsorships, and, so far it's been working well.
Okay, still about the name piece?
Yeah, names.
Okay.
So is that traditional is what, how Ramsey County do business, to name something after someone, they have to, there's a, I guess?
So,
Or an
Madam Chair and
investment?
and
Or an
Commissioners,
investment?
there is the board went through a process for a
long
naming
process.
policy. And within that, they outlined, what was appropriate nomenclature naming, and that didn't include individuals. There was a provision within that policy that called out sports complex, to go through the naming of that. And for sports complexes, that's through, a procurement, basically, solicitation, so that they can sponsor through a paid mechanism.
Okay,
Let me
just,
Yeah.
let's wrap up the conversation about
Madam
that.
Chair, Commissioner Moran, I'll send the naming policy around.
Yeah.
period, so you can read it. As a part of that, there's a different sports arenas, which are trying to operate where they're not requiring taxpayer subsidy to operate, have a different naming policy where naming rights to organizations like TCO can defray costs that otherwise the county would bear.
Yeah.
For normal operations of buildings, there's a different overarching naming policy across our system. So that's what we'll send. It was
Okay.
passed in 2017 or 18.
Okay, thank you.
19, wow.
Commissioner had, a comment or a question?
I just wanted to, I know that Commissioner McGuire said that we got it at a fire sale, but the reality was, Vadnais Heights overpaid. Right. Incredibly, and it just wasn't working for them. So when we looked at it, we initially, and it was, if it can be sold to private sector, fine, we were good with that. But we ran an analysis and said, what would it cost to make this so that it would be, pay for itself, basically? And we were looking at naming rights and all that other stuff too. So we got it at a cost that made sense. That's what it was worth. We didn't get a deal per se. Yeah. But we paid what it was worth. And that's how come we were able to do it. Now, when the dome came down, that was quite the deal. I think it was like the second time or third time. But regardless, that was when we were really looking at it and going, okay, well, what can we do here? And trying to get some money. So it's a so the names are a sponsorship. So when that contract runs out, someone else can come in, and it helps defray costs.
That makes sense.
I will just move us along a little bit here too, because what I hear you say is that you'll come back to more about like our full facilities, our work facilities too. So I think that would be a great time to, share some of those background.
Okay, we'll keep moving. So then on the arena, so we've got to identify the issues. On the strategic planning front, we've been working with community, utilizing, through the lens of our vision statement that we have on the screen here, to go through and do some strategic planning around the arena system, connecting with community members who are in the neighborhoods, near these facilities, systematically working our way through. We haven't gone through and been able to do community engagement at every facility, but the ones that we have, we've gotten information about, how they value it or what kind of programming people want to see. So we're working our way through that, and that kind of helped us go through a tiering system that I'll explain here next. So we created these, or categorized these arenas into 3 tiers. So basically, Tier 1 facilities, Aldridge, Highland, TCO, those are our largest ice arenas, that have the most seating capacity. 2 of them have 2 sheets of ice. We've got major renovation projects that need to be done at Aldridge and Highland. As we mentioned, TCO, the refrigerant is up to date. We really just can continue to operate that system, doesn't need any major investment at this time. So Aldridge and Highland, kind of the strategy for funding those refrigeration replacements, it's not going to be feasible to do that through an energy savings program because there's so much work that needs to be done there. So we've got a request, as you know, into the 2024 state legislature for Aldridge as a bonding project. Highland, we came to the board base, or we worked through the CIP process this last year, asked for funding due to CIP capacity, weren't able to get that, but in the future, we'd go potentially through state bonding, maybe a combination of county CIP, working with our partners who are there to try to identify the funds to make those investments. The Tier 2 facilities, those facilities we kind of refer to as practice rinks because they're smaller, they're a full-size ice rink, but the seating capacity is much less than the other major facilities. They really have strong resident use, strong youth associations, so that's Oscar Johnson, Shoreview, Westside, White Bear. Community engagement at Westside has been done. It is in process for the other 3 arenas, but in the recent past, we've heard from those associations and users saying that they really value these facilities. There's some interest in exploring potential off-season programming, if there's anything that could be done outside of ice scheduling in the non-ice months. But this is the tier that we're really looking at, this energy savings program, to see if we can utilize that to fund the refrigeration replacement and make additional energy savings improvements as well. And then the Tier 3 facilities, that's Biff Adams, Gustafson-Phelan, Harding, Pleasant Arena. And those are really the similar size to what the Tier 2 facilities are. They're also practice facilities. The Biff Adams Arena, we've got a long-term lease with the Frogtown Curling Club. They are working their own path to try to fund a refrigeration replacement for that facility. And the other 3 facilities have not had community engagement done yet. So the reason why you see the to be determined in those investment needed and funding strategy is that we need to hear from the community about what they want. The historic use has changed in some of those places where, you know, Harding, for example, used to have a strong hockey program, doesn't today. So we don't want to just go make investments without talking to the community, finding out, you know, do you want an arena here? Do you want, you know, another kind of recreational use for this facility? So those are the conversations that we're having. There still can be some energy improvements made in these facilities, but it wouldn't be the refrigerant at this time. So that's looking at there. Commissioner?
Yeah, Director McCabe, the Harding one is in my district, so I just have a question too. When it's not in use for hockey season, is it used as anything else too currently? Do we have any other leases or partnerships with those community partners?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I'm going to ask Liz Flynn on that one. It's a puzzle piece to keep track of all the programming that's happened at all the facilities. We do have some off-season use at some. I'm not sure on Harding.
Currently not at Harding.
Okay.
Phelan does. We've been baseball, football, in the summer months.
Thank you. Oh, Commissioner Fretham?
I feel like I say this every time, only because Shoreview had reached out that anytime we're doing, they have thoughts and ideas and may be willing to invest. I know they've had a lot of turnover in leadership.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, yeah, Commissioner Fretham, we definitely have them as a stakeholder in all the users and would be happy to receive any. But yeah, they have a very local good partner with communicating their interests, so both of them. Okay, just kind of working through the financing of the refrigeration replacements. This is kind of a little history of, you know, how we got to where we're at today. We have tried to seek CIP funds from the county in the past. There's just not been the capacity there to fund those replacements. We've also applied for funding through the state. They have various programs. One is called Mighty Ducks, which is a program specifically set up to help fund refrigeration replacement. The fund typically hasn't had enough to do like a full project, so it pays for a portion of a project, but we haven't been awarded those funds in the past. We're still trying to work on that moving forward. We talked about the Aldridge request that we have right now. Staff has also worked to try to identify other state and federal programs, and now through this work with Honeywell and having state and federal programs available, that's what we're going to explore and focus on next year.
Director McKay, before you move on, I just have a question about the cost overall, about how much it costs us to operate ice arenas, and also the request in the past to CIP.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I would need to do a follow-up to get you a specific number on what the arena portfolio costs to operate, and as well as past CIP requests. I mean, we have those certainly for this last cycle. We did request for Aldridge and Highland improvements, but because Aldridge has the state request in, excuse me, kind of see how that plays out as the legislature, and there may be capacity to help with some matching funds depending on if the state awards us some funding. But I can look at the past requests that we put together as well and share that.
County Manager.
Madam Chair, I'll just say, I mean, I think we've talked about before and seen different pieces at the hypothetical stage. You're talking north of $50 million to upgrade the refrigerant side across all the arenas. Our bond capacity on a year-over-year basis is approximately 20, maybe some years as it ebbs and flows, closer to 25 million for the entire portfolio. And it would be 50 million just on the refrigerant side of a lot of these conversations. And so to give you a sense of, we need to figure out alternate ways to get some of this work done as we go, hopefully that puts it into stark relief.
Commissioner Moran?
As we're talking about investments, what is, mid-level investment?
Sure, Madam Chair, Commissioner Moran. Yeah, when I say mid-level, that's a term. I think as I was trying to kind of differentiate between tier one facilities like Aldridge and Highland that not only need the refrigerant replaced, but also need major infrastructure work, like, Aldridge needs, a loading dock moved, a new entrance configuration, ADA upgrades, things like that. So that is what I would call a high-level investment. The mid-level investment is, we're not really looking to change the, like, configuration of the building. It's more specifically addressing the refrigerant issue, so probably not making, much more of an investment beyond that.
Right. And I also just wanted to reiterate what Commissioner Reinhardt said about 20-some years ago, that this request had been on the CIP. So yes, I'd love to hear more about this financing or savings program.
Madam Chair, and just on that part about why it ends up on the list and doesn't end up in the budget, I mean, there are, as you've all seen through the process, there are just other demands on that capital budget that are significant, and particularly in the county when you're thinking about the core service delivery missions. And so part of what this has helped set the stage for, and the request for board action that enabled Mark and his team to go about this work, is saying there are other financing mechanisms out there, and how do we really dive into thinking about it?
Commissioner Reinhardt?
Well, and having been there for that initial discussion, it really was about the fact that it was huge then, you know, and so, I mean, at that time, probably 25 million, maybe even more than that, I don't remember, but it's a very expensive thing. But the thing to keep in mind here is that we can't do it all at once anyway. So that's how come having these different tiers, and the bottom tier is really, do we want to even continue to do we want to invest in the refrigerant if we're going to use the facility for something else? And so I appreciate the differentiation there. But it really is about, it wasn't that it wasn't noted that it was needed, but we did know, quite frankly, that we had time, that we didn't have to do it right away, but that it was, the price tag was so high that nothing else could be done in the county, and pretty much nothing else had been done in the county. But we had to ramp up the capital improvements budget so that we had some, but it was too much.
Thank you.
Yep, Madam Chair, Commissioners, one thing I think I overlooked noting is on the kind of continuity of operations piece. So there's, as we replace refrigeration systems, you can actually, you can take out the R-22 refrigerant in a safe way and capture that, and you can utilize that, like recycle it basically and utilize it. So if we were to be able to replace a couple systems, we would have that additional inventory of refrigerant for ongoing operations, so that this expands kind of our timeline for having a continuity of operations for all the facilities. So the programs that we're looking to leverage with Honeywell, we went through worked with our procurement office and ended up making a decision to work with Honeywell Incorporated on this project. And the state energy program is called Energy Savings Performance Contracting. So we talk about budget neutral. So basically, obviously, we're making a capital investment into facilities. We're securing money through a third-party lender, making those investments to get the energy savings that we're projecting. That savings in paying the utility companies is used to pay back the infrastructure investments that we're making. So budget neutral. So basically, we wouldn't be coming to the board asking for capital funding if all of this proves out. We would utilize the savings as the payments on the capital investments that we'd be making. So, and as we work our way through the agreement, I think I say this later in the presentation, that there is we get through the analysis and we sign on to kind of our phase 2 work, there is a guarantee in energy savings that we would get from Honeywell. So if we were saying, hey, we're going to save $200,000 a year, that's the agreement. And if it came back at, $175,000, Honeywell would give us the check for an additional $25,000 to make that whole. Josh? That was good.
Before we have any other questions, I just want to acknowledge, Commissioner Ortega, who has, any other questions about this part?
Sorry.
Oh, no.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, as far as so we talked about the state energy program, the federal leverages the Inflation Reduction Act. And so that in the past, we've kind of told necessarily those sort of mechanisms may not have been advantageous for public entities who are tax exempt, but this program, as you know, is, and could help us out with things like solar installations, helping us pay for those sort of things. So both of these public programs are what we would be leveraging to make this cost effective.
Madam Chair, just quick, so is the actual refrigerant, because it's better for the environment, does that fall under the, energy, well, maybe you're gonna get to that, does that fall under energy savings? Because there's a lot of money for energy savings available out there that.
Sure.
As far as the way that the state statute, most states are, it's energy savings and operations and maintenance. So they'll be very specific to each measure, whether it's lighting building envelope, as we go up, that's your building. But yeah, those will be measured and verified line by line, depending on the measures. And we have to guarantee them for the statutory term. So in this business, we've been in it since 1984. We've done 7,000 savings. Great state of Minnesota. We have 163 projects delivered since 1980.
Thank you.
Moving on just kind of walking through what's the work that's taken place so far. So we had initial conversations with Honeywell after going through the procurement process and decided to work with them. We did basically a preliminary look across the system, taking a look at all of our facilities and seeing, is this something that has potential, this sort of program? When they looked at the tier one facilities that had those major investments, as I said, it was deemed that energy savings was not going to be able to fund a, massive renovation of a building. But that's where the tier two facilities that need to focus mostly on the refrigerant replacements, it does look like a viable option to do the energy savings program there. After they shared that information with us, we came to the board in November with an RBA that basically formalized an agreement for Honeywell to do a deeper dive analysis. So that's where they go building by building, look through the site-specific, challenges and opportunities, look through the mechanical systems, really vet everything out to see, okay, what exactly would this mean at each of our facilities to make these improvements. So that body of work is happening right now. They're coming up on being about a third of the way through that. If we get to the end of all of that work, so we're kind of doing it in thirds and doing check-ins, we get to the end of it and it says, gee, this really isn't going to cash flow out. It doesn't appear that the savings are there. We're under no obligation to continue. If it turns out that it does cash flow out, we can move forward with the work and formalize the final agreement and move forward.
Commissioner Reinhardt.
Well, that sounds like it's kind of all or nothing, because there's going to be some cost savings, and I hope that the analysis, if there's an environmental impact as well, you can't necessarily put a dollar on that, but I hope that, if we need, buying something for $100 and we have to have a cost savings of $100, if we can only get 85, maybe it's still worth doing.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Reinhardt, that's an excellent point. I didn't want to kind of confuse things about all the space in the middle, but yeah, it could come back where it covers 90% of the investments and there's a request for 10%. So I guess we're aiming for full cash flowing.
Yeah, that would be.
And we'll get the analysis and share that back.
Okay.
As far as the scope of work that would take place, this is what we're illustrating in this slide. So you'll see again the tier two Oscar Johnson, Shoreview, West Side, White Bear. You see the refrigerant replacement on the top, and all of those check boxes following with lots of exciting improvements, building automation systems. There's some facilities that have solar, basically insulation improvements, metering, recapturing, wasted energy, LED lighting. The check marks indicate improvements that have already been made at our facilities. And then again, on the tier one facilities for Aldridge and Highland, if we were to move those projects forward, get funding from the state, for example, and fund that project, there would be many more energy savings elements there. I'm just demonstrating in this slide right now what the scope of work with the Honeywell specific program would be that we're wanting to cash flow out, we're hoping. So that's the scope of work that we would be taking on with this program.
Can you also share more specifically about the solar panel piece, about why energy consumption is like more than 80-some% of use?
Yep, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and Ryan can speak more specifically to this, but I know that you did do an analysis of buildings and to see whether or not they have the capacity to be able to hold like the load for solar panels. I believe in a lot of our facilities, unfortunately, that isn't possible. Ryan, you could confirm on that?
That's correct. If we had a feasibility study, for a variety of reasons, mainly like structural. Focus on Aldrich and PTO here because those who have the
Thank you.
I should mention also, we have 5 locations in our system.
Reinhardt.
Well, plus if you've got trees surrounding you, which you often do in park facilities, you can get the generation that you need. Now, have we looked at, because on my own home, we did a heat exchanger to begin with, so to cut down on the natural gas that's used, that was an air heat exchanger, not a geothermal, and then did the solar. Are we looking at a combination of things? Because to me, you know, the one step was like, oh, I thought I really did something great, and it's like, well, yeah, it was great, but it could be better. And so, and getting the solar, because the incentives that are there right now make it actually reasonable to do, and the savings and the environmental advantages of it as well. So are you looking at multiple things, or is it kind of just zeroing in on one option per building?
Sure. Madam Chair, Commissioner Reinhardt, I would say, yeah, I think we're looking at the whole spectrum of improvements that we can make. Like Ryan mentioned, we have heavily investigated solar and have made some investments. The ponds facility, although, you know, no longer a golf course, but we're still able to utilize the solar array that's there. We've got it on our Parks Administration building, other park facilities. As far as this, there was a detailed analysis that was gone through. So, yeah, I think within this scope of work, as we're talking to Honeywell as well, if there's other suggestions, I mean, I think we're open to a variety of ways and solutions that we can reduce our energy.
And the one last piece I'll add to that, Mark, would just be, you know, from a carbon life cycle analysis, even solar panels, like, have a carbon impact on the creation of. It's less impact than other things. Saving from ever producing the kilowatt of energy, which is a lot of what this does, is the most green way to start out on the side of ensuring we're being smart about energy consumption. And, I mean, this is a huge signifier here, both in terms of what we're going to be doing to green our arenas, and then what you're able to do at the end of this, even if it doesn't get the whole way to some of these technologies, which also continue to come down in cost too. So that might be the last step you get to take in a very efficient building then going forward as well. It doesn't preclude that work happening as we go forward, kind of like you talked about with your own house, where it's iterative as you go.
Yeah, glad to hear that.
Okay, so as far as financing, as I mentioned, so the scope of work that we're indicating, as County Manager Connors said, obviously there's many more investments to be made in the system, but the value of this work is estimated at $6.2 million. That, you know, number, once we get that finalized, could grow. As far as a kind of payback, Honeywell does a maximum of 20 years. So the agreement you know, it could be for a lesser period of time, it could be a maximum of 20 years, but that payback happens, to take place to pay back that capital investment. And then, again, once, the agreement is final, Honeywell guarantees that energy savings. I mentioned that they would, you know, have to provide the difference if there were to be a shortfall. And we're actively working with, their group that works in finance and lending, as well as having our, CFO and her team, communicate with Honeywell and see how this works, because this is a different sort of agreement than what we've had in the past. The program benefits, if we're able to move this forward, sorry.
Director McCabe, can you just go, just back to the last bullet point about, the guaranteed savings? What if the energy savings exceed the projections? Like, do we get any sort of money back, or just through the, I'm guessing.
Of course, we can get that money back, Josh.
Good question. And normally we do exceed, our energy savings shortfalls this month, because there's a safety factor built in to our energy engineers when we put their calculations together. That would be something that would go back into the, and so annually, what we have to do after, let's say we come back, we deliver this project, we have our measurement verification, the report that's delivered annually, and it would show you the deviation, positive or negative, or dead on, kind of like in your tax. But that tax return is, you know, zero, but, a perfect tax return is zero. But normally there is a positive deviation that would go back into.
You get a perfect tax return every year, don't you?
Yeah.
I can tell.
Thank you.
So, program benefits, as you mentioned, this would do a lot of work across our system, but mainly update these 4 outdated refrigeration systems to replace with new ones, decrease our ask of capital money from the county board. And by making these improvements, there's a projected savings within those facilities of 25 to 30% energy reduction, which is huge, and gets us a long way toward, you know, the progress toward achieving our overall county energy reduction goals. And then just, again, helps ensure this continuity of operations. So our next steps, again, Honeywell is working on this detailed analysis, going site by site. Our finance team, their people in finance working together to vet out the overall financing plan and how that would all be structured. And then we would work towards, you know, finalizing our agreement. We would share that final analysis back with the board and talk about, you know, next steps of the program. So that's what we see. And in talking to our partners at Honeywell, we're expecting that analysis to be done later this spring. So we're looking at hopefully a fairly short window. I forget what season it is, given it's 50 degrees out right now, but we got a little time, but it should be in the coming months. So with that, we just wanted to open things to any other discussion.
Oh, yeah, County Manager.
It's great to get to sit here through this workshop. First, great job by the team here. We challenged Parks through the last budget cycle and before to figure out ways to not be stuck in neutral, where we're lamenting the lack of CIP dollars to fund these projects. And when you think about all the other things that this allows CIP to do, it's really a big step forward. So kudos to the team, and thanks to Honeywell for their work as well. I would just say in 2008, when the Guaranteed Energy Savings Program work was really starting with counties, cities, and schools in Minnesota, I was at the Association of Minnesota Counties doing energy policy. And this was a big thing, and Ramsey County's answer always was, we can just self-finance all of it. And like, I could not get this county to do a project. The arc of all of that to sit here today on the verge of doing a project is great, because what it shows is, I think that was the wrong answer. It's not that we couldn't afford to do things as this county. It's that we can do more work at once if we do these things in the right mix with the money we can bring to bear. And it's really great to see a turn in the philosophy here. And folks like Gene Kruger, who aren't even a part of this workshop, I give credit to as well for being a part of that, like, change. And going forward, it's just a really exciting piece to move faster towards really important goals at a really important time as we think about climate and energy use across our state and country.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
Just add to that, I think it's been a change in a lot of ways, that our CIP group is really looking at a lot more than we were giving them before. We were asking the legislature for a lot more than we used to, so I think it's been a good change all around, that we really looked outward. I think previously, Ramsey County probably felt like they could do it themselves. I'm not sure how that came about. But, now we're really, I think every chance we get to really get partners to do this work is a good thing, so thanks, yeah.
And I have a question too, maybe for representatives from Honeywell about, just in general, like what Honeywell gets out of this, too, and also about, I guess, both the incentive as well as, the benefits, that you all see.
Well, Commissioner, Zhang or Madam Chair, sorry, and the rest of your commissioners. I'll start with that, and then I can turn it over to Honeywell reps. But yeah, you asked that question the other day. We did do a follow-up, this morning and kind of talk through that, the compensation for Honeywell, and that is part of that phase 2 agreement. So yeah, there is, as there would be with any, partner that we worked with in this process, there is a compensation piece for Honeywell, and that is also financed through the Energy Savings Program. So, Josh, I think it'd be helpful, you shared, that there's a, bit transparency piece with, how you work with other public entities and kind of where that's supposed to be.
Could he come up? Can you speak? Could you guys come up to the table rather than speak from back there?
I've been doing this since 2008. I've been part, roughly, been part of about 500 projects, depending on, variance in scope. And, at the end of the day, the way to think about this group at Honeywell, because Honeywell means a lot of different things between airplane engines and we make refrigerants on the chemical side and the petrol side, is we're a general contractor that guarantees energy savings. But our procurement model is so much different, given that, we helped, draft a lot of the state statutes in 49 out of the 50 states, that when you get to a certain point in our 30, 60, 90, which is how the contract was written, so the county is protected, that we introduced what's open book pricing. So you see our schedule of values, our deliverables, our design fees, things like that. And when you get down to the bottom of that sheet, which both Ryan has seen it as an example early on in our presentation, we've been working with him for a little over a year, or at least I have. When we get down to the overhead and profit, it's 12% overhead and 10% profit. After we have all of our, our deliverables per the contract.
Which is competitive in the marketplace.
It is competitive in the marketplace, so whether we're doing a federal Air Force base, a very large facility, or a K-12 in Wisconsin, or I was part of the University of, I did 9 of the 11 two-year campuses, and the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Parkside, as an example, the model is always the same. We have industry standards like a general contractor would, region by region, a comparable for anyone that's been part of a capital improvement planning board, would be like the RS means, schedule of values for general contractors. Shows region by region markup, all the people that need to be involved, and that's all summarized in our table at the 60%.
That's another quick question. Thank you, Madam Chair, and you're probably gonna tell us this, we're here to approve this, right? I mean, we're here to say, great, go forth and do this work. And which I agree we should do, but you're gonna give us what you want us to do, but, what's the estimated time that this would, how long is this all gonna take?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Commissioner McGuire, as I said, we're working through the analysis process.
Yeah, okay.
And so, we should hear back on that, final analysis later this spring, so hoping mid-April, we'll see, a timeline, could be a little bit later. But once we have that, we're gonna share that back with the board. Obviously, workshops aren't the decision-making policy time, so we just wanted to share all this information with you, kind of, provided that this works out, that, you're supportive of moving forward in the direction to utilize this energy savings program. But yeah, I can't, as far as the implementation, I think, we had talked about that we'd have to go through standard procurement processes and things like that. So we've got a while to go, but we're not talking several years. We're talking, get that analysis back and then move forward through our standard procurement.
Madam Chair, I think the one part I would add, we're not asking for anything today.
Yeah, okay.
I guess if everybody in here hated the idea that we were focused on a tier of arenas that were likely gonna make sense from what we've learned so far and finishing the analysis, I think it's more of a read the room type moment and check in on a big project. And so in reading the room, we didn't get that feedback today, so we're gonna continue forward.
Ready to vote on it.
And at some point, then you'll get final details and procurement would come next.
And I might just say that for those of you that are new, that we've asked a lot of questions, like, should we be in the ice arena business? You know, we have a lot of needs. And so that is a different conversation that we will have when we do facilities. And you know, I'm a skater, but I said, why do we have so many ice arenas? But I've become knowledgeable now on the community need and what we do and how we invest our resources as a county. And I've come to, you know, support these ideas. And of course, I support, you know, all the energy savings we can get to keep them up. But I think we'll continue to have those conversations of how much our ice arenas cost and if it's still what we want to be investing in.
And just to tell a story, for a local county, Chisago County, we're implementing phase 3. Our first phase with them was in 1994. What was the second one, Cindy? 2006 or 7? 2006 or 7, and now in 2021, we're on our third phase. So, you know, we do what we say, and we typically deliver. So, we're looking for, you know, to look at the rest of your portfolio if we do a good job at the end of the day.
And Madam Chair, Commissioners, Commissioner McGuire, as Deputy County Manager Berg mentioned at the beginning, we will come back with this,
He's the county manager now.
County Manager.
No, sorry.
We'll come back to this board, for another workshop that takes the comprehensive review of the system, and that will be more informed through going through the legislative process, seeing if we're awarded any funding or not.
Right.
Continuing our community engagement work, because as you said, I mean, we want to hear from the community. You know, do you want this to be an arena facility, or is there another recreational need that your community would prefer? And so that's the work that we're doing, and having the community kind of like dictate, tell us, what sort of services they want.
Thank you. Before I go to you, Commissioner
I just want to say, Commissioner Jones, Chair Jones, I appreciate your question around Honeywell, because I know I wrote down notes that you stated, that was there, that Honeywell would pay for the shortfall, that Honeywell is going to guarantee the energy savings. I said to myself, so what are we giving them, you know, to do this work, to get these guarantees? So it was good, you know, and I heard your experience, how long you've been doing this and your results, you know. But that was a thought, so I really enjoyed hearing what that looks like and how it's going to be paid out, or what that partnership looks like. But I also appreciate your question around, should we be in the business of the ice rink? And my question was, what is the cost? I mean, what do we not do? Was there a separate pot of money set aside that doesn't impact other things that we should be doing in Ramsey County that is different from, like, the capital investment budget that we're doing to do this type of process?
Madam Chair, I think to this specific conversation, which is not on specifically the lines of business that the county should be in, I don't think that's necessarily the ask today. And right now, the board is in this line of business. This provides, at estimates, approximately $7 million of work that gets to be done that does not impede on the other general purpose money that comes into the county. And so that's part of what our priority has been, is not crowding out other priorities, which leads to the TCO name on One Ice Arena. It leads to this work here. We're trying to be more entrepreneurial, like a business, in some of the areas in the organization that can function that way. And, you know, going forward, this isn't up to me, right? But I would encourage that in those areas to continue to try and do that, so it doesn't crowd out other areas of work in the way that, your question's a good one.
Yeah. And let me just say it, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be in this business, or I'm not saying whether we should or shouldn't.
Right.
You know, it was just.
Yeah, no, I got it.
Commissioner Reinhardt should ask.
Well, and I think that is an important question. One of the things to bear in mind, especially with Parks and Rec, some of the things actually make money that we can then utilize within Parks and Rec and other areas as well. Golf is one of them. And I don't know that we've ever made money on the ice arenas, but, well, actually, TCO is supposed to pay for itself. But So it's not always something that is going to, if we stop doing that, we're not gonna have suddenly a lot of money that we can use someplace else. So I wanna make sure that it's understood that it's not just a drain and, a service. But I do think the fact that we have the third tier here does say, okay, do we wanna continue to use these? And because I honestly don't see us getting out of the ice arena business,
Sure not.
because that's what we do in Minnesota, apparently.
It's Minnesota, it's cold.
Well, and the
Kind of falling
counties
a
kind
little.
of across this, you know, have taken on that responsibility and, to have something that's organized. But, and I realize why we're doing the energy savings program on just, and starting with the arenas because of the need as far as R-22 being phased out and, the energy consumption there. But I'm glad to hear that once we get through this analysis, that we'll be looking at other facilities. I mean, the fact of the matter is, we can utilize that energy savings program on this courthouse. I suspect there's a lot of savings that could be had here. And so, but there's, and usually, just like with recycling, I mean, one of the reasons we have the biz recycling program is businesses that want to start recycling, there's an upfront cost. And so if we can help them with the upfront cost, then they can get the program going. And it saves them money and the environment and all that. And so it's kind of the same thing where I kind of look at it as Honeywell is helping us make that initial investment, and then we get the savings, and if they have miscalculated, which I don't know that they've ever miscalculated, because they know they're on the hook.
We've had shortfalls, but the risk to us, you know, such a strong balance sheet that we have to hold those energy savings in reserve. So it's red on our balance sheet until that, obligation is fulfilled. So that's also part of, you know, when we look at partnering, it's important.
So I think that there's a lot of other opportunities, that, again, will not only enhance our bottom line, but will help with climate change.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions for the good of the order here? Good. I think, Commissioner Reinhardt, you wrapped it up well about, moving next steps. We look forward to kind of the final analysis, and also making more decisions later on about moving forward together. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Great, good job.
Yeah.